Alright, so this time around, Black Clover decided to end the year off strong with some unreal devil manifestations. With previous chapter to save Captain Yami, Asta convinced the Black Bulls that he had a way of doing so without additionally causing harm to anyone else. And without any need for explanation, they were willing to bet on him entirely, which just goes to show the sort of bond and faith they all share. Thanks to Finral, Asta was able to teleport elsewhere and wield Yami's katana, now dubbed the fourth sword, Demon Slasher. This was to be a joint endeavor between Asta and Libe, as they were both fighting for the sake of others. This was Devil Union mode like we had never seen it before, as Asta would sport some really cool looking changes, declaring that as those not chosen by mana, they would be the ones to make their own choices, as together they would use Demon Slasher Infinite Slash Equinox. And with that, the Titanic Fiend was split into two, then revealing both Yami and William. With that, Yami is saved by the impromptu transmuted flowerbed arm created by Gray, followed by the explanation that this was in fact the power of Demon Slasher, as it does not cut what its wielder seeks to protect. And in seeing all this, it would seem that Asta has now surpassed both the likes of Yami and Nacht, his masters of the sword and Devil Union respectfully. With this latest chapter, a now split LUCIFERO amalgam would begin to crumble and plummet downwards in a way that was rather concerning for the citizens below. However, to prevent further catastrophe, it would be Yuno, who seemed to be healed following the events of his fight against Zenon by none other than perhaps the greatest healer around, Mimosa, as he would now fire a shot repelling the potential damage of the collapse, a feat which impressed Asta, with the feeling being mutual for his rival as well. Patri would then leap upwards to save William, who had now begun to regain consciousness in the elf's embrace, with Longris breathing a sigh of relief to see his captain actually remembered in all this. Again, Yami had been successfully caught, and so now he would congratulate the various members of his guild on a job well done, as they were all very happy to see him safe. Nacht, however, and as usual, was still a bit distant from the collective. We would then see the many captains of the Clover Kingdom rejoice following these events. Phogalion dismisses Salamander, and Charlotte looks up longingly. With that, we may presume that this is on account of her worry for Yami and perhaps her desire to be among those welcoming him back into the fray. Not only that, but considering the prior confession of Gaja to Lolopechka, Charlotte may very well be playing around with the prospect of doing something similar with Yami. One can only hope, and speaking of hope, to follow all this, the people of the Spade Kingdom would now be able to think of their future, which I think will actually be pretty interesting considering Yuno is in fact a royal of the Spade Kingdom. So his decision making here is going to be major. These people need a leader, and there hasn't exactly been anyone presented to be a leading force beyond Yuno as a royal, so how exactly this may conflict with his desire to become the Wizard King of the Clover Kingdom is something I am looking forward to better understanding. But you know what, at this point, things were looking to be a pretty happy conclusion to the end of the year, but as we have said, things have been way too easy, and it seems like Tabata agrees, as to appear behind all this merriment would be a brand new devil who looks really damn cool. They to me look like a cross between Megecula and Nero, which are two great designs in my book, but they would question why exactly the humans were taking things so easy all of a sudden, as they began to scratch their head, and I love the drippy detail of the speech bubbles here. They would then go on to add that the sooner they leave, the better. According to Nacht, this was the supreme devil of the underworld's second layer. The devil would then go on to elaborate by saying that Lucifero's manifestation was now halfway complete, as a devilish spiral would appear in the sky, and from it would be the king of devils himself. And before anyone could truly react, the fiend would point out towards them all. And we are talking about this collective of some of the strongest characters in the series. He would then tell them that their heads were raised too highly, as he would now point down, would ultimately push them all into the ground simultaneously, and this is major. First and foremost, the cool factor of this king of evil making his enemies drop down before him is amazing, but oh my goodness, the gravitational pressure this thing must be imposing with only a finger has to be insane for even characters of such impeccable mana skin and power overall to be pushed down like this all the same. Asta would now fly in atop his blade out of Devil Union, alarmed by the current scene. Yet as he flew over, suddenly to his side would be the king of devils himself, Lucifero, who would recognize Asta to have been the one getting in the way of his complete manifestation, as we would receive a horrifying malice from this monster, followed by Asta's face of terror. The danger levels have risen like crazy, and 2022 is looking to be like an insane year for Black Clover fans. Now, we have seen quite a bit of gravity magic as is, so it will be really fascinating to see how LUCIFERO handles it as opposed to the likes of Dante or even Morris. It's simply being stronger isn't exactly going to cut it, at least not in my book, so I need to see something really fascinating. But far more questionable than LUCIFERO would have to be the Supreme Devil of the second layer. We do not have a name for them, and we do not know what their powers are. They are just a big old question mark. Now, I feel like Black Clover is a very interesting series in the sense that I don't really feel the gravity of the situation, pun intended, in regards to any of our characters dying or anything like that, at least not now. The stakes aren't exactly there for me. However, when it comes to things like this, I'm not exactly sure how our characters will manage to break out of this. If you think about it, the Black Bulls were struggling as a collective. All of them were having a hard time facing off against the partially manifested LUCIFERO monster. And so for them to now face off against LUCIFERO himself, even at half manifestation as he is now, just doesn't seem very realistic. And despite not doing too much with that particular conflict, I don't expect Noct to be any different, as he himself was on the brink of death against the high-ranking Twin Devils. Honestly, in this particular situation, I have to look to Asta, to Yuno, and to Noel, who are in a sense the triad topplers. Now, I know that Asta was not the one to defeat Dante, that was Magna. However, Asta certainly did more than enough to make up for not doing so, taking down that ancient demon and taking down the Twin Devils. This being an opportunity for Yuno to actually fight for his kingdom before their very eyes. And I say his kingdom in the birth sense. I know that he claims the Clover Kingdom all the same. To be fair, he doesn't exactly need it, but any little bit helps. But in thinking about all this, I am only picturing their fight against LUCIFERO. I still have no idea what they will do to this question mark devil, simply because we do not know what they are capable of. But for them to be placed here, for another devil to be placed here on top of the King of Devils, is very interesting to me. LUCIFERO absolutely needed to manifest here for the sake of Asta's development. I mean, come on, with this arc, Yuno and Noel both got their major moments when it comes to dealing with their past or their backstories, and in particular taking down their parents' killers. And would you look at that, it just so happens that the one to kill Asta's mother, and Libe's mother at that, was LUCIFERO. And although we know this, Asta does not know this. He has no idea about his mother. Libe has not divulged anything in that regard. So for him to find that out in the midst of battle is going to be very fascinating. And I'm honestly not entirely sure what Asta's reaction to that would be, beyond him mostly feeling the sorrow of Libe. And that is something that Yuno kind of was devoid of, as he never knew his parents, and so his convictions when fighting against Zenon were not really rooted in that, but rather the avenging of his guild. And the same may be said for Asta in retrieving Yami from all this, but it goes deeper than that because he does have Libe at his side. And hopefully you'll continue to be by our side by subscribing to Plot Armor with notifications on, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best Black Clover content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching, and have an awesome day. I love you.